Hi, today we are talking about changing the thermostat and thermostat housing for the BMW MINI Generation 2. It's a part that quite often fails. So here's a new one, old one. This is actually from a local motor factors, a little bit cheaper than direct from MINI. It's about £70 or so, nearly 80. I think the old one, I think this is an electronic controlled valve. Come thermostat, and I think it's stuck in that semi-open position, which means that the heater was a bit on the cold side, unless you really put your foot down a lot, and took a while to warm up, and also the fan went on for a little bit too long when you stopped. This new one comes with a temperature sensor and of course the actuator for the valve, exactly the same size. At the same time, the pipe that connects from the thermostat to the back of the water pump, this end part, the plastic just cracked and the O-ring got pinched and broken off and was leaking water, so I've changed this as well. This is about a £50 UK pounds part. Had to come from BMW, that one. So rather than show the two halves, taking it off and putting it back on again, a little bit unusually this time, I'm just going to show the putting back on procedure. Obviously removing is a reversal of that, so you can see where it was positioned. So it goes over this hole here in the engine block. It's under all this wiring, so I actually took the clip off the wiring loom, this plastic cover, to give it a little bit more flexibility for pulling this out of the way. Some of the connectors that removed, loosened off the I think that's the water connection onto the turbocharger, just so this pipe can move a little bit more. So I was able to disconnect this bottom pipe from this rubber pipe, a little bit tricky to get to. All of these hoses have got these compression type clips on, and so a pair of pliers like these mold grip type, are pretty useful, because what you can do is basically grip around the spring loaded pipe clamp like that, and it'll lock into place and allows you to move the clip in and out, and basically get the pipe off, and you can adjust it by the end piece. That's quite a useful tool. What else do we need? A lot of patience and perseverance. There are only 3 bolts that go onto it, 2 of which are semi-hidden, so having a mirror is quite useful. So it goes on in this position. You can see 1 bolt at the top that goes on, the other one is right underneath there, which you can just about get to from that sort of angle. The other one is just underneath this pipe on this side, so again you can see that one. With the mirror you can see where they are, and it's quite easy to get a socket into those positions. Obviously drain off the coolant system first by disconnecting the pipe at the bottom of the radiator. Squeeze our tensioner in like that, you can pull it off like so, jack it up, spot it on axle stands. You need to remove the trunking that goes from the turbocharger around to the air filter. That's already been removed, dead easy to do. There's 1 bolt which goes into over here, which holds the air filter in place, then it just pulls off. There's also a bit of trunking that goes down for a cold air intake for the air filter itself. Then you just basically pull off all of these hoses after releasing the clips, undo the bolts, disconnect the connectors, pull them out of the way. It's these ones here. So this grey connector basically goes onto the grey type plug, which is this one here, it's temperature sensor. This green one goes onto the brown temperature sensor on the thermostat housing. I didn't need to move out the way the expansion bottle. So removal was actually fairly straightforward. The only difficult bit was working out where the bolts on the thermostat housing were. What would be nice is to work out how to actually test this electrically controlled thermostat. So what I'm going to do is cut apart the old one, have a look at the mechanism and how it should work. Maybe we can get it working again. And then we'll apply the same technique to the new one, just to show how you test a thermostat. So here's the thermostat control inside. And what I actually found is when you apply current onto the connector, 12 volts or more, it's actually a heating element, and I've heated it up, and you can see here there's a gap between this plate and the plastic, which allows water to flow out of the exit pipe, and basically what it's doing is internally expanding, pushing up this pin which pushes on this outer part, which opens up the gap. You'll probably find in a minute, yeah, it's starting to come down now. As it's cooling off, that gap closes. So it is a sort of semi-electrically and also temperature controlled valve. So when the water temperature gets hot, and the spec of these I believe is 105 degrees centigrade, it will open up. But also you could supply current to it, or the engine ECU could supply current to it to encourage it to open at a lower temperature. I'm not quite sure what the reason they do that. Possibly for when the engine shuts down, and you might want to open up the valve to allow heat to dissipate from the stopped engine. That's one possible reason. So that's how it works. So that was cut off the top of the old housing, like so. Also had this spring mechanism in there as well. So if you want to test your one, you could try applying 12 volts onto the connector at the top and see if this outer housing moves up and down. You have to wait quite a long time for it to warm up, but also you can measure the resistance, see whether the heater element is still connected. So it was about 16 ohms or so. So do that if you want. If you want to test the temperature sender unit, then measure with a multimeter on 20 kiloohm scale. Depending on your ambient temperature, measured this a couple of days apart with different outside temperatures. It was 11,000 ohms first time. Today it's 8,500 ohms. But if it's around that sort of resistance, that shows that it's at least connected, probably working. So if you are changing the coolant pipe, it goes in roughly in that sort of position on the engine. Quite difficult to see when it's engaged. If you happen to be changing the water pump at the same time, then you'll be able to see the pipe poking through in the water pump hole. Let's just zoom in there. There we go. There we go. So you can see that's with it fully inserted as far as it will go, and no rubber O-rings poking out or anything. Reinstalling, put some plumber's silicone grease over the rubber O-ring, and that'll allow it to get in the housing easier. Same with this end. And this is the pipe in position, and under here, there we go there. So you have to get your palm on it to give it a good shove, and you'll feel a little bit of a sort of thud as the O-ring engages into the back of the water pump. So then I'm going to put the thermostat housing back into place. I put one of the pipes on already, makes it a little bit easier for inserting onto that pipe that goes off to that one there, goes off to the turbocharger unit, that one. Also check the mating surface on the cylinder head is clean before you finally put the thermostat on. Give it a wipe off if necessary. So the other thing you also need to do is make sure the notch in the pipe, this bit here, lines up with the slight protruding piece of metal that's on the thermostat housing. You can only really feel that with your fingers by getting down there, lining the two up. If they don't quite line up, you'll have to rotate the pipe until it's in the correct position. So this is how we have to take the hose clips on and off. So clamp the mold grips around them, allows it to easily move. You can then pull the pipe out or reinsert the pipe into the hose. So I've released that one off, that one's now attached. A nice way to get these bolts in is to use a little magnetic screwdriver, so you can hold the bolt while inserting it wherever it's got to go. So you just check the hole that's going in. There we go, into the hole. Have a look in the video description for any links to products like this you might need. So this is how the clip goes on. The pipe is in roughly about that position, around the back there. This clip has to go from the top and will sit around the pipe like that. And there you can see that's the metal clip in position. If everything's lined up correctly, it should go in very easily. So that's the 3 bolts evenly done up. Tighten each one gradually. Quite a firm hand tighten. This is actually 6 pound-foot of torque. you've got a torque wrench, try and measure it. Then we need to connect these connectors back, temperature sender. So to release these, get a little screwdriver, lift up that catch and push it off. So this time, put it back on, just push into place, make sure it clicks. So then there's 4 more pipes to put back on. 2 this side, 2 the other. Pretty obvious which position they go in. So, and we'll put those clips back on in a minute. And there's 2 more around the back. One there just put on. Get the clip done in a minute. And here's the bottom one. So I need to release that clip to do that top clip. Put back on. And that's the bottom clip. Squeezed. And we get the pipe back into position. These are the ones for the heater. And then wiggle the spring clip in the correct position, release. There we go. And then we have these other plugs to put back in place. These on there, make sure they click. And so now, just need to put these pipe clips back into place. Like so. There we go, like so. Clips back on again. So everything, I believe, is now connected to the thermostat housing. I'll just put the cover back on the conduit. We'll just do up the bolt and the turbocharger. 19mm sockets. As a reminder, that just makes it a little bit easier to move that pipe. So that's the plastic conduit cover put back on in place. So it lifts off by just these little plastic clips that lever out. Quite easy to break like most plastic bits. Not essential, just makes it a little bit more flexible to move around. Then we have the cold air intake pipe to wiggle back into position. So then we have the air intake filter housing, and there's just one screw down here which uses the Star T25 of those sorts. And then the final thing that's left is the hose to connect the crankcase breather, which just pulls off. In this case, push back on again onto the turbocharger, which after you've released the Jubilee clips will just push back on again, or come off if you're dismantling. So that, I'll get that into place. But basically that's everything assembled. When you fill it up with antifreeze again, you will need to undo the little blue bleed valve, which is down here. You can see that little, that little cross there, and then a flat blade screwdriver. Go onto that, and with the engine running, you undo that anti-clockwise until you see a nice stream of water coming out, and when you're done with it, turn it back up again clockwise till it's tight and no water is flowing. So I was going to go through the procedure for activating the auxiliary water pump for the turbo as described in the Haynes manual. Unfortunately, that procedure didn't seem to make it operate, but if you just go for a drive carefully, the auxiliary water pump comes on or stays on after you've stopped, and you can hear it here. Listen carefully, it's not going to come out in the video. It's a little whirring noise that's basically coming from down there, which is where it is. I'm sure you can see it, it's down there somewhere, and you can hear it whirring away, and it's basically circulating water through the turbo to keep it cool. I think that goes on for a few minutes. After a while that will clear out any air in the water. It should be fine. Just check the fluid level, keep topping it up. And that's how to change your thermostat housing on a Mini Cooper. So this is the N14. This is a 2007 model N14 engine. It's actually a club vent, but same for the normal hatchback. That's it. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.